Okay, it's recording, eh?
Okay, thank you, Guru.
Okay, so I'll make you a host now, Dinesh?
Okay.
Dinesh shouldn't make a full host. Okay. Okay, you can start, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you,
Or you
Guru.
just want to give just do invocation, wait for others to come in.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we'll start with the Mangala Charan. Om Majnana Timirandasya, Jnananjana Shalakaya, Chakshurunmilitam Yena, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha, Sri Chaitanya Vishnu Stapinam Yena Bhutali, Swayam Rupa Garamayam, Dadati Swaparantikam, Vandeyam Sri Guru, Sri Yudapatakalam, Sri Gurun Vaishnavacha, Sri Rupam Sagal Sagana, Raghunathan Vidam Stam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Saudutam Paljana Sahitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishaka Nishamcha. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपीशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्परूपेश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय हरे कृष्णा So before I start, I just want to let you all know that because once I switch to the slideshow mode, it's quite difficult for me to view messages and all that. So if there's anything, please feel free to interrupt me. So my slides, is it visible? Hello.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. First of all, I'm sorry because my slot is supposed to be on Saturday evening, but today evening I have to go to Kampong Payang Murugan Temple. So I thought of preponing the session. So the title of today's session is Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, or knowledge stolen by illusion. So as we all know, in chapter 7, verse 7.15, Krishna talks about the 4 kinds of people who do not surrender unto him. In 7.15, he talks about the 4 kinds of people who do not surrender unto him. Then in 7.16, he talks about the 4 kinds of people who surrender unto him. So today we'll be looking at one category out of the four kinds of people who do not surrender to Krishna, and that is this Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā category. So in 7.15, Krishna says, Namam duskritno mura prapadyante naradamma Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā asuram bhavamashrita. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. So the first category is Muda, grossly foolish. Second one is Naradama, lowest among mankind. Third is Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. And the fourth one is those who are of the demonic nature, Asuric. So we'll look at the purport, but just the main points. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that simply by surrendering oneself unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality, Krishna, one can surmount the stringent laws of material nature. At this point, a question arises: how is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary men do not surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead? Mukti, or liberation from the laws of material nature, is sought by the leaders of mankind in different ways, and with great plans and perseverance, for great many years and births. But if that liberation is possible by simply surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then why don't these intelligent and hardworking leaders adopt this simple method? So we can clearly see from the Gita that in many verses, Krishna emphasizes that we who are trapped in this material world, we are suffering because of our desire to be controllers and enjoyers, and we are also deluded by Maya, and because of that we are suffering from this vicious cycle of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. But Krishna always says that the simple solution to escape from this cycle is to surrender unto him. Like in chapter 7, also in 7.14, Krishna says, Daivihesha gunamayi mamaya duratya mamaya prapatyanti mayamitam tarantite. The power of Krishna's Maya it's so powerful that it deludes us, but simply by surrendering to Krishna, we can overcome the ocean of miseries due to this material life. And then even in 9.32 also, Krishna says that those who take shelter under him can escape this cycle of birth and death. And even in chapter 18.66, Krishna says, Sarvodharman Parjajya Mamekam Saranam Raja. Auntuan Sarupabhivyo Mokeshami Vachusara. So just surrender unto me and I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions. Don't worry. So in many verses, Krishna keeps repeating the importance of surrendering unto him. But there are so many so-called scholars of the Gita who merely study the Gita only to show that they have this scholarly ability, but they don't practice what Krishna has said. The Gita answers this question very frankly. Those really learned leaders of society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, the Kumaras, Manu, Vyasa, Devala, Asita, Janaka, Prahlada, Bali, and later on Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya, and many others who are faithful philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. So these are the great devotees who preached the glories of Krishna, and they themselves first surrendered into the lotus feet of Krishna, and therefore they were blessed and empowered by Krishna to preach his glories. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for material gain, do not accept the plan or path of the Supreme Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly plans and consequently complicate the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. Because material energy, nature is so powerful, it can resist the unauthorized plans of the atheist and baffle the knowledge of planning commissions. So this clearly refers to those who claim to be scholars, those who try to project themselves as scholars of the Gita, but they do not follow what Krishna has said. The atheistic plan makers are described herein by the word duskritina or miscreants. So in 7.15, the verse starts with Namam Duskritno Muda, and then in 7.16 it's Chaturvida Bhajante Mam Jana Sukirtino. So in 7.15, those who don't surrender to Krishna are called Duskritis. In 7.16, those who surrender to Krishna are called Sukirtis. So Duskritis are miscreants. Kriti means one who has performed meritorious work. The atheist plan maker is sometimes very intelligent and meritorious also, because any gigantic plan, good or bad, must take intelligence to execute. But because the atheist's brain is improperly utilized in opposing the plan of the Supreme Lord, the atheistic plan maker is called Duskriti, which indicates that his intelligence and efforts are misdirected. So despite having the ability to understand, though they may actually understand the core content of the Gita, but due to their tendency to be like what we have seen in the previous sessions, due to our tendency to be controllers, we always tend to define who is God. We tend to set the criteria for who should be God. We are not willing to accept God as he is. So because of that, they are unable to follow the message of Krishna, and therefore they are misguided, and they also end up misleading others. Under illusion and the modes of passion and ignorance, all his plans are baffled, as in the case of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, whose plans were smashed to dust, although they were both materially learned as scientists, philosophers, administrators, and educators. These Duskritinas or miscreants are of 4 different patterns as outlined below. So we saw the 4 categories of Duskritis, but for today's topic, we are only going to focus on one category, and that is Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā. So I'll just focus on the elaboration for that category. The third category of Duskriti is called Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, or those persons whose erudite knowledge has been nullified by the influence of illusory material energy. They are mostly very learned fellows, great philosophers, poets, literati, scientists, etc. But the illusory energy misguides them, and therefore they disobey the Supreme Lord. There are a great number of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā at the present moment, even amongst the scholars of the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, in plain and simple language, it is stated that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is none equal to or greater than him. He is mentioned as the father of Brahma, the original father of all human beings. In fact, Sri Krishna is said to be not only the father of Brahma, but also the father of all species of life. He is the root of the impersonal Brahman and Paramatma, the supersoul in every entity in his plenary portion. He is the fountainhead of everything, and everyone is advised to surrender unto his lotus feet. So it's not that, of course, in chapter 9, Krishna is mentioned as Prapitamaha, the father of Brahma. As we know, Brahma is the topmost living entity, and even Brahma himself, in Brahma Samhita, he says, Ishvara Paramakrishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. It is also acknowledged by Brahma himself. And in chapter 10.8, Krishna also mentions Aham Sarvasya Prabho. He is the source of everything, even the spiritual world and the material world. But the Māyayāpahṛta-jñānās, though they know all these verses, maybe they do understand, but still they tend to mislead others based on their subjective interpretations. Despite all these clear statements, the Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā deride the personality of the Supreme Lord and consider him merely another human being. They do not know that the blessed form of human life is designed after the eternal and transcendental feature of the Supreme Lord. All the unauthorized interpretations of the Gita by the class of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā outside the purview of the Parampara system are so many stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual understanding. The deluded interpreters do not surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, nor do they teach others to follow this principle. So as mentioned earlier, neither they follow the actual message, and since they themselves don't understand the real message, for sure they cannot convey the real message to others. So in today's session, we'll be looking at one example, a prominent example, who clearly fits this definition of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā. He is a great scholar in terms of academics, because he has had a lot of academic qualifications, but he is also one of those many political leaders who have really misinterpreted the Gita just to suit their own agenda. They were never bothered about conveying the real message of the Gita. They simply wanted to interpret according to their own agenda. So he's one such person, but of course there are many politicians who have done the same, but of all those people, he's one person he has a lot of academic qualifications, but that alone is not enough to understand the Gita, which is all about spiritual knowledge, unlike the so-called academic knowledge, which we get from academic institutions. So just some background info about this person. His name is Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, known as B.R. Ambedkar, born in 1891. So it is said that he did 2 PhD theses. So obviously that's a very high qualification, but that alone is not enough to understand the Gita, as we shall see later, because I've tried to make this very as objective as possible, because I've only reproduced whatever he has mentioned in his writings and speeches, volume 3. In this volume, he has mentioned about the philosophy of Hinduism, and then there's also one chapter titled Krishna and his Gita. So Ambedkar has mentioned, he has conveyed his understanding of Hinduism and also the Gita, but as we shall see later, all those are completely flawed understanding, which have actually, obviously, these were not received from a bona fide parampara. That's the root cause. So we shall see that later. And actually, I downloaded this volume 3 from the ministry's website. So it's there in the website. Others who are interested can also verify from that. So in page 25, he mentions that actually this is the biggest lie which is propagated by all the anti-Hindu forces. They always say that Varna is equal to caste. The word caste itself is not, it didn't originate in India or Bharat. So it is actually a foreign concept which was utilized to corrupt the meaning of the Varna system. So these people who are always hell-bent on misrepresenting and misinterpreting the teachings of Hinduism, they have always wanted to project this idea that Varna is equal to caste, which divides people based on birth, and which is all nonsense. If we look at the authentic references from the Gita, we clearly know that all these are nonsense, because we know that the British were always focused on this divide and rule formula. So first they divided Hindus and Muslims, and then even among Hindus, they always were exploring to see how to further subdivide the Hindus, like based on caste, as they call it. And they also divided Hindus or the larger population of India based on this nonsensical Aryan Dravidian theory. And the saddest part is that even many Indians echoed those views. So even after this so-called independence, which was gained in 1947, even until now, many Macaulay Putras are still echoing the same views until now. So here, Ambedkar says that caste originated from Varna. So he, just like others, he tends to use caste interchangeably with Varna. Then he also says that it is a vertically organized system. So I've tried to look at all his references, but all his references are from these other Macaulay Putras, like all the other Western scholars who have nothing to do with Hinduism. because we have always been told that like in ISKCON itself, we belong to the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is a bona fide parampara. So to get real knowledge, we have to approach a bona fide parampara. But all these so-called scholars like Ambedkar or others, they have always echoed the views of the colonizing forces who were hell-bent on destroying our culture. So these people have always been echoing their views without bothering to approach spiritual masters who belong to a bona fide parampara. Then in page 78, he goes on to talk about this Varna being equal to caste, discrimination based on birth and all that nonsense, which we will demolish all those myths based on references from the Gita. So he goes on to talk about this Brahminical supremacy and all that. He says that Hinduism is the Superman's heaven. With he refers to Brahmins as Superman and the common man's damnation. So he says that Brahmins are Superman and common man, like the so-called low caste people, as common man. So he goes on and on echoing the views of the invaders without really giving any authentic references from the scriptures. And throughout his life, he has always been obsessed with just one book, and that is Manusmriti. But even in this volume 3, he himself mentions that the Vedic knowledge is organized around Shrutis and Smritis. So as we all know, the Vedas belong to the category of Shrutis, and our Puranas, Itihasas all belong to Smritis. The sources of Vedic knowledge are so diverse. There are so many books related to our Sanatan Dharma. But this so-called scholar, he was always obsessed with just one book throughout his life. And then he was never bothered about learning what is the truth. He simply wanted to distort everything to suit his agenda. And he himself knew that his points will be counted. So he also says that I'm conscious that my position regarding the philosophy of Hinduism will be assailed from different sides. So contrary it is to the current views about it, and that it is bound to be assailed, the attack may come from various sides. So he himself knows that all his arguments are quite nonsensical, but he was not bothered to substantiate them further. So I've merely reproduced his observations and arguments, and we shall demolish all those arguments based on authentic references from the Gita. And he also goes on to say, it will be said that I'm wrong in taking the Manusmriti as the book of Hindu religion, and that the true gospel of Hinduism is contained in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. So he himself realizes that he has been wrong by being obsessed with just one book, and that is Manusmriti. But he also goes on to say that it seems to me that it matters very little whether one takes the Smritis or Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita. Do the Vedas teach something which is fundamentally different from what the Smritis do? Does the Bhagavad Gita run contrary to the injunctions of the Smritis? A few illustrations will make the matter clear. It is indisputable that the Vedas lay down the theory of Chaturvarna in what is known as the Purusha Sukta. This Purusha Sukta recognizes two basic principles. It recognizes the division of society into 4 sections as an ideal. It also recognizes that the ideal relationship between the 4 sections is inequality. Again, he himself admits that he may be wrong due to his obsession with the Manusmriti, but he tries to justify by saying that the Vedas and Bhagavad Gita also talk about the same things as outlined by the Manusmriti. First of all, the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita are the authorized scriptures, and the Manusmriti is basically a rule book for containing man-made rules for mankind. So it is not very wise to look at these two types of scriptures as equal. And but there are so many subject matters covered in the Gita, and even in the Vedas also. We know that there are 4 principal Vedas, but there are many other branches of the Vedas, like, because the word Veda itself means knowledge. So whenever people say Vedic knowledge, it is quite redundant actually, because prior to invasions in Bharat, the Vedas were the only source of knowledge, because it was like one huge book. So only when Vyasadeva divided it into the different divisions, then it became like the 4 main Vedas and other Upavedas like Dhanur Veda, Ayurveda. So our Sanatan Dharma is extremely huge, like an ocean, but unscrupulous people who have been echoing the views of invaders have always wanted to reduce it to just one book called the Manusmriti. So that itself shows their dishonesty. So basically, he himself admits that he may be wrong by being obsessed with just Manusmriti. And then he goes on, he actually tries to justify by saying that actually the Vedas and Gita also say the same thing. So we can actually take Manusmriti as the one single authorized scripture. And then he tries to project himself as a great scholar of the Gita, but it's extremely amusing, as we shall see here. He says that what the Bhagavad Gita teaches is also beyond controversy. Its teaching may be summarized in the following 4 pronouncements made by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So here, he has simply reproduced the English translation, and there's no, of course, like if we see the Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada has given the original Sanskrit, the Devanagari script itself, followed by the Romanized version. And then Prabhupada has actually derived the translation. He did not simply write the translation. He derived based on word by word meaning. We get the translation, only we see the main translation of the verse after the word by word synonyms. So Prabhupada has derived the translation compared to these Macaulay Putras, who they simply manufactured their own translations. Like here in 4.13, okay, based on the translation given here in this volume 3, it is said, I myself have created the arrangement known as Chaturvarna, the 4-fold division of society into 4 castes. In the original verse, Krishna says, Chaturvarnyam Maya system Gunakarma Vivagasa, Tasya Kartaram Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. Krishna only mentions the word Varna, but as we can see here in this translation, the word caste is used interchangeably with the word Varna. So these so-called scholars, they always tend to manufacture their own translation, and then they insert words which were never mentioned in the original verse. So as we shall see later, actually this genius called Ambedkar, he has actually summarized the entire Gita based on 6 verses out of a total of 700 verses. So first he has picked this 4.13. Then he also picked 3.35, where it is stated that roughly, I won't say that this is the original translation, but just to quote him, even it may be easier to follow the occupation of another Varna, yet to follow the occupation of one's own Varna is more meritorious. although one may not be able to do it quite efficiently. There is bliss in following the occupation of one's own varna, even if death were to result in performing it. But to follow the occupation of another varna is risky. So this is from 3.35. Then he also quotes 3.26 and 3.29. Then he quotes 4.7 and 4.8. So this genius called Ambedkar, he has simply picked 6 verses out of a total of 700 verses in the Gita to summarize the Gita, like 4.13, 3.35, 3.26, 3.29, 4.7, and 4.8. Then he goes on to make his conclusion. Such is the position of Gita. What difference is there between it and the Manusmriti? Gita is Manu in a nutshell. Those who run away from Manusmriti and want to take refuge in Gita either do not know Gita or are prepared to omit from their consideration that soul of Gita, which makes it akin to Manusmriti. So here, he is hell-bent on trying to prove that the contents of Gita are the same as Manusmriti, simply based on 6 verses. He simply selected 6 verses to push his narrative further, simply because those verses contain keywords which match his agenda. So that is the superhuman feat of this genius called Ambedkar, because like us, for those who have attended the Gita Gyan program, like we attended level 1, level 2, maybe some have attended level 3. So even for this level 1 program, we had like, we covered 1 chapter per day, like for 1 hour. So it took like around 18 days. And then even before attending Gita Gyan, I had attended this online course organized by ISKCON Chennai. It was called Gita Made Easy. So that was also like a Gita Gyan level 1. So in that course, it was like it was an 18-day program. So I attended through Zoom. So even for that course also, they used to cover like 1 chapter per day for 1 hour. And then they also organized this Gita Mastery course, which was like a Gita Gyan level 2. So we all have been learning the Gita chapter by chapter, verse by verse. And then since we all study Bhagavad Gita as it is, Prabhupada has given such lengthy purports containing authentic references for each verse. So we all learn the Gita like that. But this superhuman genius called Ambedkar, he simply picked 6 verses out of 700, which is equal to roughly 0.86%. If we even consider only the verses spoken by Krishna, the 574 verses, that is still roughly equal to just 1%. So this genius called Ambedkar, he has given his conclusion about the entire Gita based on this 1%. So he's that type of a genius. So these people have always been hell-bent on spreading their propaganda, and their propaganda is always supported by these 3 pillars. The first is that they try to push this falsehood that Varna is equal to caste. And then in this volume 3, Ambedkar also complains that the Gita, Krishna's instructions in the Gita do not permit a person to change his Varna. And then he also complains about the hierarchy of Varnas, like the vertical organization of the Varna. So all these are falsehoods which were being spread by invaders, but even until now, these are being echoed by even these Ambedkarite sycophants. But we can easily demolish all these myths simply by referring to the authentic references from the scriptures. But before I continue, is it okay so far? Hello.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, so I'll continue. So first of all, these people always spread this lie that Varna is equal to caste. So we'll prove with references from the Gita about how Varna is not equal to caste. So in the Gita, Krishna has said in 4.13, Chaturvanya Maya Sisham Guna Karma Vivagasa, Tasya Kartaram Avyam, Vidya Kartaram Avyam. The single biggest lie which is spread against Sanatana Dharma is that Sanatana Dharma promotes caste system which discriminates people according to their birth. But in 4.13, Krishna uses the word Varna, which is based on gunas and karmas, guna karma vivagasa. So Krishna clearly says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So Krishna clearly mentions about four varnas, but as we all know, there are so many castes, and this notion of caste is not there in any of the authorized scriptures, and there is no discrimination by birth in the Gita, because even in chapter 9.32, there's a verse where Krishna says, Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, ye pisho papa yonaya, sriyo vaisas tata sutras, te piyanti param gatim. Krishna says that regardless of birth or even gender, those who take shelter under him can always achieve liberation. Here's some explanation regarding the Varna system based on the modes of material nature. Here Prabhupada has explained how the modes of material nature are related to each Varna. The Brahmanas are in the mode of goodness, administrative class. The Kshatriyas are in the mode of passion. Vaishyas are in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance. Shudras are in the mode of ignorance. So for each Varna, there is the Varna itself is related to a particular mode of material nature, and therefore each Varna is ideally suitable to engage in certain occupations which are related to that nature itself. And this is nothing new, because even in this so-called modern days, there's not a single country which does not have this Varna system. Which country does not have knowledge workers? Which country does not have the Kshatriya class? Like which country does not have armed forces? Which country does not have labor force? And which country does not have the wealth creators like entrepreneurs? So whether people recognize it or not, it is still there in all the countries, and this concept, all the concepts in Sanatana Dharma have been there since time immemorial. That's why it is called Sanatana Dharma, the eternal Dharma. But however, the so-called intellectuals or wokes from the so-called developed nations, they won't recognize it, but they always have the tendency to do renaming of all our concepts. So from the purports, we can clearly understand that each Varna is actually related to the modes of material nature, and that's why Krishna has said Guna Karma Vibhagasa. So it has nothing to do with birth. There are also other verses from chapter 18, which explain further about the qualities for each Varna. Like in 18.40, it is stated, there's no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems, which is freed from these three modes born of material nature. So in the 14 planetary systems, like we are in the Earth, middle planet of Earth planet, and the topmost planet is Satyaloka. But even up to Satyaloka, all the living entities are subject to the modes of material nature. So we cannot escape from these modes. And therefore, Krishna created this Varna system, especially for us as human beings, so that we can conduct our society. In 18.41, Krishna mentions the four Varnas. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes, or chastiser of the enemy. So here also Krishna clearly says that each Varna is based on gunas and karmas. So this itself is enough to demolish the myth propagated by all the anti-Hindu forces. Then in 18.42, it talks about the qualities which are possessed by Brahmanas. So unlike the popular misconception, a Brahmana is not someone who is born in a Brahmin family. He should be someone who has these qualities. But in Kali Yuga, most of the so-called Brahmanas, they simply say that they are Brahmanas because they have a certain surname and all that. So for sure, if we ask them what is the definition of a Brahmana based on a Bhagavad Gita, for sure they cannot answer because they simply don't have the qualities of a Brahmana. Then in 18.43, the qualities of the Kshatriyas are also mentioned. But actually here the administrative class, like from even the kings belong to the Kshatriya group. So they are expected to display heroic qualities. But as we know, the so-called kings of Kali Yuga, they never go anywhere near the battlefield. And still they also try to talk about the fallibilities of our Sanatana Dharma. Then in 18.44, Krishna mentions about the qualities of Vaishyas and Sudras. Krishi Goraksha Vanikyam. Vaishya Karma Swavajam, Paricharyatmakam Karma, Shudra Shapi Swavajam. So all the four Varnas are related to gunas and karmas. So here's just an additional information. Since Krishna has clearly mentioned here, Go Raksha, cow protection. In Article 48 of the Constitution of India, it also mentions about cow protection. So this is just an additional information. So since cow protection is it's very dear to Krishna's heart, so we as devotees, we can also look into how we can improve our seva through Gau Seva. Then the second pillar of the propaganda machinery of these anti-Hindu forces is that, especially the one which is mentioned by our genius Ambedkar, is that the Gita does not allow change of Varna. So in 18.45, Krishna says, by following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now, please hear from me how this can be done. This is in 18.45. After explaining all the qualities for each Varna, Krishna proceeds to explain how we can achieve perfection simply by following our own Varna. In 18.46, Krishna says, by worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. So we have to stick to our Varna and do our own work with the devotional service mindset. Then in 18.47, Krishna says, it's better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Actually, this verse is very similar to the one in 3.35. It's far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So we ourselves know that we can only engage in one particular type of occupation because we ourselves know our strengths and weaknesses. So it's not that Krishna is forcing us to, follow this, because we ourselves know our strengths and weaknesses. And if we simply keep changing our occupation, we can never really deliver anything of a high quality to the society, whether it's, whether we are engaged in the business of products or services. Like even in the medical profession, there are so many specializations. So even the medical professionals, they cannot simply change their specialization as they wish. So in the purport, it is mentioned that even for spiritual duties and material duties, it is best that we perform these duties according to our own qualities, because we are actually bound by the modes of material nature, and therefore we are conditioned according to these modes, and therefore we have the natural tendency to act in certain ways. So we have to engage in the correct varna so that we can do our jobs to the best of our ability. So it's as simple as that, regardless of whether it's our spiritual duties or material duties. So our genius Ambedkar said that Krishna does not allow people to change their varnas. First of all, what is the need to change our varna? What is the need to keep changing our occupation? Because we all, after we do our graduation, and then some people tend to change their areas, but it is best if we follow the same area even for post-graduation, so that we can actually specialize in that field. Only then we can really deliver quality service to the society. But in this purport, Prabhupada has given some extra elaboration regarding transcendence. In the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parasurama was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as Kshatriya. So it is not that changing of varnas, it is not totally impermissible, but it is allowed for those who have achieved transcendence, like these great sages. But these people lived in, they are not Kali Jivas like us. For us, our lifetime is not even enough to achieve transcendence. So where is the question of changing the varna? So the second pillar of the propaganda machinery has been demolished. So now comes the third and final pillar regarding this hierarchy of varna. It is said that actually Ambedkar mentions that the organization of the varna system is based on this vertical organization where Brahmanas occupy the top spot and all that. And he gives references to the Purusha Sukta. Purusha Sukta is there in the Vedas, but it is also, the same thing is also mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. In second canto, chapter 5, verse 37, it is stated, the Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaishyas his thighs, and the Shudras are born of his legs. Here, his mouth, his arms, his legs, these are all related to the body parts of the Supreme Lord. The Purusha Sukta is related to the Purusha avatars. Like we know that the Purusha avatars of Krishna, like the Mahavishnu, Garbhodaka Shai Vishnu. So the Purusha Sukta topic is related to the Purusha avatars, and the body organs refer to the organs of Mahavishnu. So here, the different parts are symbolically thought to represent different varnas. But in the purport, the explanation is given clearly by Srila Prabhupada. It is stated that the mouth of the body and the legs of the body are non-different constitutionally, but the mouth or the head of the body is qualitatively more important than the legs. So the baseless allegation by these anti-Hindu forces who say that Brahmanas come from the head and Shudras come from the leg. So Shudras are seen to be filthy or some other nonsense. They say things like that, but just because Shudras are seen symbolically to represent the legs of the Lord, it doesn't mean that they are filthy. Because for people who suffer from chronic disease, if their leg gets amputated, do they get excited that a very filthy part of my body is gone, I'm feeling good? Do people say like that? All the organs are equally important. They just serve different purposes differently, but they all serve the same body. So it's as simple as that, and it has been elaborately explained in the purport. It's just that the intelligent class in society, the Brahmanas, since they are in the mode of goodness and they are seen as the knowledge workers, they must speak on behalf of the body as well as accept foodstuff to satisfy the hunger of the body. The hunger of the Lord is to accept the fruits of sacrifice. The Brahmanas or the intelligent class must be very expert in performing such sacrifices. The Brahmanas are required to know the Vedas or the ultimate source of knowledge. Vedas means knowledge and Anta means the end of it. According to the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is the source of everything. Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, and thus the end of all knowledge, Vedanta, is to know the Lord, to know our relationship with Him, and to act according to that relationship only. So it is not that Brahmanas are put on the top spot. It's just that they represent a particular body part of the Lord to serve a specific purpose, and all the other body parts also have their own purpose. Then it's also mentioned here, the mercantile class is also required to give protection to the cows in order to get sufficient milk and milk products, which alone can give the proper health and intelligence to maintain a civilization perfectly meant for knowledge of the ultimate truth. The Brahmanas who are knowledge workers, actually, they themselves have to rely on Vaishyas, because Vaishyas engage in cow protection and to produce milk, and milk is required to nourish, for brain nourishment. So even for the Brahmanas' brain to work properly, they need the cooperation of the Vaishyas. So there's no discrimination here. It's as simple as that. So we have demolished all the three pillars of this anti-Hindu propaganda machinery. But our genius also goes on to say that in the Chaturvarna, there are 4 Varnas, but the Gunas are only 3. How can a system of 4 Varnas be defended on the basis of a philosophy which does not recognize more than 3 Varnas? Here, he's for no reason, he's mixing up the Varnas and Gunas, and then he says there are 4 Varnas, how can there be 3 Gunas? So all these are coming from a person who summarized the entire Gita based on 6 verses. So that's the amusing part of it. So it's not surprising that these Māyayāpahṛta-jñānās, they actually in this page 364, it's part of this chapter on Krishna and his Gita in this volume 3. So Ambedkar uses some derogatory language against Krishna, but it's not surprising because Krishna himself had spoken about the people like Ambedkar in 7.13 also. Deluded by 3 modes, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Mohitam na abhijanati. Then in 9.11 also, Krishna had said, Avajanati ma muda manushim tanumashritam, parambhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools reared me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So this Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, like Ambedkar, who was supposed to be a very well-educated person. But as far as spiritual knowledge was concerned, he was just as blind as Dhritarashtra. So it was said that towards the end of his life, he embraced Buddhism, but actually he ended up manufacturing his own religion based on his mental concoction. They call it this Ambedkar's Buddhism or Navayana Buddhism. And then normally when his sycophants, whenever they embrace this Navayana Buddhism, they take up this oath, which contains 22 points. So they have all sorts of nonsense against Hindu gods. But as we shall see later, all these things only prove their foolishness, because in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 3, it is clearly stated that Lord Buddha himself is an incarnation of Krishna in Kali Yuga. So these people actually claim to embrace Buddhism in order to protest against Hinduism. But since they don't know who is Krishna, so they only end up fooling themselves. Because, of course, the advent of Lord Buddha himself was for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theist. Then in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.24, the mysteries surrounding the advent of Lord Buddha is described, why Buddha descended and why he kind of propagated a seemingly atheistic philosophy. So all the explanations are available in the purport. However, Krishna being the ocean of mercy, even as Lord Buddha, he made the faithless faithful to him. But of course, if we see these, normally these anti-Hindu people who say that they embrace Buddhism in protest of Hinduism, actually it's not that they are not doing it out of love for Lord Buddha. It is just they simply want to project their hatred for others. So that's why they end up doing all these foolish things like organizing beef festivals. Lord Buddha himself, he propagated the idea of ahimsa, though the definition of ahimsa became corrupted by some other foolish politicians. The actual meaning of ahimsa is to respect all living entities, not just human beings. But these sycophants of Ambedkar, like this Ambedkar Students Association, they even organized a beef festival. So this is the kind of respect they have for Lord Buddha. But of course, even in the vows taken during when these people embrace Buddhism, they conveniently say that they don't believe that Lord Buddha is an incarnation of Krishna. Of course, they will never accept authentic references from the scriptures, and therefore they end up manufacturing everything based on their own mental concoctions, and they only expose themselves of how foolish they are. They simply reject the scriptural injunctions, but in the purport itself, Srila Prabhupada has countered everything by explaining that Srimad Bhagavatam was composed just prior to the beginning of the age of Kali, about 5,000 years ago, and Lord Buddha appeared about 2,600 years ago. Therefore, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Buddha is foretold. Such is the authority of this clear scripture. However, Muras and Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, those who never surrender to Krishna, for sure they'll never accept these authentic scriptural injunctions. And so they continue to manufacture more nonsensical things like in Article 25 of the Constitution of India, the term Hinduism is used as an umbrella term to refer to Sikhism, Jainism, and Buddhism. So the sycophants of Ambedkar say that they embrace Buddhism in protest of Hinduism, but in the constitution, it is stated that Hinduism is an umbrella term to include all the other faiths, including Buddhism. So such is their convoluted logic, because our genius Ambedkar himself is also known as this father of the Constitution of India, which is, well, as we shall see, this constitution was adopted on 26 January 1950. And in the past 71 years, up to August 2021, about 105 amendments were made. So in some ways, we can also say that these 105 amendments actually represent the foolishness of the father of the Constitution of India. And that's why we cannot regard spiritual knowledge as to be the same as material knowledge. Because like people like Ambedkar, though they are supposed to be well qualified with all their academic knowledge, they always have these 4 basic flaws of having imperfect senses, committing mistakes, to become illusion, and also to cheat others. So we also saw how Ambedkar himself, he realized that his obsession with Manusmriti as the sole book of Hinduism was flawed. So he tried to justify by saying that Manusmriti is equal to the Vedas and Bhagavad Gita. And then he also tried to come up with this nonsensical conclusion simply by referring to 6 verses from the Bhagavad Gita. So normally when we study the Gita, we first start from the intro, then we go to chapter 1, the first verse, then we go verse by verse until the end of chapter 1, then we go to chapter 2. But our genius Ambedkar, he did like this, because based on his conclusion itself, it's very easy to imagine how he would have studied the Gita. He would have taken his copy of the Gita and he would have jumped straight to the index part. So as we know, in the index part, we normally have all this, the list of distinct keywords. So he jumped to the index part, and then he simply chose some keywords which were related to his agenda, like Varna and Caste. Then he looked at the page numbers, and then he simply picked those verses, those 6 verses, which were suitable to according to his agenda, and then he simply drew his conclusions based on that. Even if we consider this from an academic point of view, we know that for any research project or any simple survey, the first question which arises will always be related to the sample size. Even if the researcher convinces everyone regarding the sample size, the next question which arises will be regarding okay, how the sample was selected. So here, our genius, he simply selected 6 verses out of 700, and that too, all those 6 verses are from chapter 3 and 4. As we know, there are 3 main divisions of the Bhagavad Gita. Like the first 6 chapters are related to Karma Yoga, the middle 6 chapters are related to Bhakti Yoga, and the last 6 chapters are related to Jnana Yoga. But our genius Ambedkar, he had this karmi mentality, and therefore he was completely devoid of this bhakti mindset, and he ended up losing his jnana. Therefore, he's the perfect personality who can represent this category of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā. And that's why it is very important, as Krishna himself has mentioned, that in order to learn the truth from spiritual knowledge, we have to approach a spiritual master. If we look at these writings of Ambedkar, he has always been quoting many other Macaulay Putras, not spiritual masters from any bona fide parampara. So that's why these people perfectly suit the category of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā. But we as devotees, we know the importance of gaining knowledge from a bona fide parampara, and therefore it is also our sacred duty to enlighten others who may not be having this, who may not be aware about the importance of gaining spiritual knowledge from a parampara. Then in the purport also, Prabhupada has explained about the importance of approaching a bona fide parampara. Then it is also clearly stated that while we pursue spiritual knowledge, we should not blindly follow whatever is said by the spiritual master. However, we should also not come up with absurd inquiries. So we saw from all these conclusions of Ambedkar that they were all full of absurd inquiries and baseless allegations. But that is the DNA of these anti-Hindu forces. So we, in today's session, we just demolished all these myths and propaganda of these Māyayāpahṛta-jñānās. So in conclusion, it is always important to gain spiritual knowledge from a bona fide parampara and not regard all these politicians as authorities in spiritual knowledge like Bhagavad Gita. So it is very important not only for us, but even for others to go to Goloka, back to Godhead. So that's all from me for today, and thanks to everyone for attending. Hare Krishna.
Wow, that was such a fantastic class. It was,
thank you.
Well
Hare
researched.
Krishna, Prabhu. It's really very, very good.
Yes, yes.
Sell it to you, Prabhu. Sell it to you.
So,
thank you.
yeah. So this thing will be available in YouTube. Please share with everyone. And Dr. Dinesh, you are doing very well. Congratulations. And okay, do you have any questions or any comments?
Yeah, please feel free to ask.
I think everyone is mesmerized. All right. Okay. So with that, do you have anything to say, Dinesh?
No, I just want to say thank you to all those who attended. I didn't expect this much because I thought maybe people wanted to relax today. It's quite close to.
Good.
No, actually,
okay.
Now it was like 10 people.
So okay.
Thank you all for attending.
Because Dinesh is supposed to simply pre-record and upload. So anyway, happy to see that almost 10 people turn up. Very good. Right. So anyway, thank you so much. And till we meet again with Dr. Dinesh next week for more scientific research and evidence. All right. Till then, wish you all to have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna and have a nice day. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
So Dinesh, you can end the session.
Okay.